Hey, 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 how's it going now?
What's up, Tiff? What's up, everybody?
Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday Talks episode. How's the day been for you?
The day's been kind of neutral.
Okay.
Like we're still in the middle of testing. We have one day left. The kids are tired. I'm tired of reading the script. They're tired of taking the test.
Everybody's tired.
Everybody's tired, but we getting through it. We have gotten through it. How
how
about your
many
day?
more how many more Mondays do you have till the end of the
Oh,
school week?
three.
Three? Nice.
Yes.
Nice. I love it. You can do this. You're in the home stretch. You can do it. The kids can do it. It's like you give a pep talk to yourself and a pep talk to the kids. And then you give a pep talk to your own kids. Like everybody gets a pep talk. You get a pep talk.
Oh,
You get a
well,
pep
my own kids only have 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, y'all are in different school districts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, so they're really in chill mode then.
Right.
Because we
Right.
know that last week of school, at least for elementary, that last week of school is just wrapping things up, watching a lot of movies, an extended recess here and there. You
Packing the
know,
classrooms. Don't forget
yes,
that.
just packing up the classroom.
Yep.
Yes, definitely. What's it like in the middle school level, like that last week of school in high school?
So, I mean, really, the kids think they're done after they test. So,
Mm,
so there is that struggle there where we're like, no, we're going to either finish what we get to, or we're going to prep you for next year. At least you'll have seen it before.
yeah.
But that last week, definitely same thing. We're wrapping things up. We're finishing up grades and putting those in. Last minute things and packing up that classroom, getting ready for the summer.
Yeah, and then it's summertime.
Oh yes. Look, I cannot I keep going back on Monday and telling my colleagues every weekend I feel like I'm already on summer break. This is getting hard.
Right? It does. When you know the end is very close, you start to check out mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your brain
Mm-hmm.
is already on vacation.
Right.
Well, I know tonight we wanted to wrap up our conversation about emotional regulation. If you're watching and you did not catch part one of this series, it's two parts about emotional regulation, it's tied back to our episode on executive functioning. I encourage you to go back and watch those. We'll give a quick recap tonight, but we know that time is a non renewable resource. So we like to keep our episodes to about 30, 35 minutes so you can plan to join us for a set amount of time and then get on about your evening. So go back and catch those episodes. So, Val, do you want to give them a quick recap on some of the components of emotional regulation and some of those strategies that we talked about last week?
Yeah. So it was really, really good and informative. We started with starting early. All kids benefit from teaching about their feelings. Point out when a book or a movie character is feeling sad, happy, angry, or worried, and kind of just have a moment and have that conversation. Because that also leads to connection, which is another strategy. And with connection, it's really important to be consistent. It's really important to also be in a space where you can be comforting with them, because that'll help you develop and the child to develop a secure attachment to each other. You know.
Yep.
Yep.
One of my
Um,
favorites. Can I share
yeah.
the next one? This one's like my most favorite because I feel
I
like
know. I was gonna shoot it to you.
we forget this as parents. We just assume kids just learn stuff, through osmosis. I don't know. But talk and teach, explicitly teaching your kid how to recognize and name their emotions and not trying to do that in the moment when it's all heated and everybody's emotions are running high, but pointing it out and explicitly teaching them to name and identify those emotions is huge. And then we also talked about how parents need to model good behavior. I kind of like tag that as own your ish, like own it. When you mess up as a parent, when you make a bad decision, a reactive decision as a parent, own it. Let your kids see you own that. talk about how you could have responded differently, what you'll do next time, and then ask your kids to own their poor choices, poor behavior as well, and ask them to talk about how they could do things differently as well. What were some of the other strategies we covered?
So especially like when you say model good behavior, for me, I feel like that starts with staying calm. Like when you're
Mhm.
in a situation. So try not to lose your cool. Well, if you need to take a minute and take a breath, if you need to walk away and calm down before you address the situation with the kid, communicate that to the kid and then go do what you need to do. Because the more the kid sees you doing it, the more likely they'll try it and they'll do it too.
Yep.
It's also really good to plan for options. Give the kids options. That you get so much better results when a kid feels like they have some control. And in that situation, you know that you are still in control because you are controlling the options. You're just giving them something to pick from. And
Yep.
didn't you like the act it out?
Oh, I love a good role play. Yes. Role play and rehearse. Practice helping your kids start applying these new skills in the real world through role play and acting it out. So parents, teachers, you can assign yourself the role as the kid, have the kid be the adult or the other friend in the situation, and act out how you can respond. I like to do this with my son, and I try to be the most exaggerated version of whatever the situation is so that it brings some lightness and fun to it. But then we also talk about how you can respond and react in those moments when you're dealing with other kids who might not be regulating their emotions really well. And maybe you caused a little scene at home with some choices that you made, act out. I like to mimic and act out the role being in a more exaggerated kind of fashion so that he can see that as well and see how it feels, first of all, to be on the receiving end of that. And then
Mhm.
also he gives me some insight into how he feels like I should respond. And of course, sometimes he's like, well, you could just say, it's okay. I'm like, no, 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 no. You just completely showed out. That's not gonna be an option. No, nice try though. But you can talk about it and have that dialogue back and forth. That's why I like that one so much. So if you haven't checked out part one of our emotional regulation chat, then please go back and take a listen to that one because we dropped some very good information, science backed,
Mhm.
research based information on how to help your kids learn how to regulate their emotions, which is a life skill. We all need to learn that so we can become more responsive and not reactive. And that's what we need our kids to do as well. So we didn't finish last week because we like to keep things to 30 minutes and I didn't want to rush. You didn't want to rush the last
Mhm.
few strategies. So we're going to wrap it up and dive into those tonight as well. So the first one that I wanted to talk about and share is be a team. So if you're the teacher in this relationship, if you're the parent in this relationship, be a team because for kids who are struggling to learn emotional regulation, consistency is key. So everybody needs to be consistent in how they are responding to the child, the prompts they may be giving the child, the way they talk, the language they use to talk about how their child can regulate their emotions should be similar. You all don't have to follow a script, but if you are living in a house and you got parents, grandparents, if you're a teacher, you have a teacher assistant or a parent in your classroom, everybody needs to work together to address the child self-regulation problems and sit down to have a discussion about it and coordinate an approach on how everybody's going to handle it. Because if one person is reacting to the child's behavior and popping off, and then the other person reacts to the child's behavior in an overly nurturing way that y'all are disconnected. And so if I was the kid, I'm gonna go to the person who's more nurturing and soft than I would the person who's giving me the same energy I'm giving them. How have you seen that in
Listen,
the past?
the kids are manipulative, okay? They come out the womb trying to manipulate situations to their benefit. Like that's just we were
Mhm.
born in sin. Okay, that's part of it. So no, in all seriousness, like it is beyond important to be a team player. And like you said, in the home, you can't have both extremes and the parents not come together so that the child can see that they are united about this. And then especially in the classroom, like I talk about my amazing co-teacher all the time whenever I get a chance. And so we literally thank goodness decided that we were going to be a team. So we don't just plan like what we're going to teach and the academic lessons that we present. No, we talk about, okay, this kid right here is doing XYZ and it
Mhm.
is not benefiting the class at all. What do we think we want to do? How do we think we want to approach them? And not even just an individual kid, like the whole group. And then, so what does that produce in our class? It's well managed and we don't have as many problems as some other people.
Yeah. And I was talking with a friend this week, and they teach at the middle school level. And they were saying, kids get in trouble in the classroom, they get sent to ISS, in school suspension, for a couple of days. And he was like, the in school suspension teacher is like bringing them snacks. They enjoy going. So he's like, what's
Am I
the point?
supposed to enjoy going to ISS?
Not at all. So there's clearly a disconnect between how the teacher in that ISS room is handling the kids' behavior and what the consequences of their behavior have called for, and what the teacher feels like is a needed vibe in ISS. This should not be an enjoyable experience. You shouldn't be like, oh, okay, I don't care if I get sent to ISS because, she brings us snacks. She's real chill. We in there on our Chromebooks. Nobody's really monitoring what we're doing. So even in your school, your grade level, find that way to bring up a topic in a way that it can be heard by everybody. Because we just come out and say like, now you in there causing more problems than good, right? That might not be the way to start the conversation, but at least like have some dialogue to talk about. When these kids come to ISS, it's supposed to be as a consequence for their choices that they made in the classroom. So if they come and it's an enjoyable experience, that really negates the purpose of sending them there anyway, right? How was it
Right.
handled at your school?
I can say we have a great ISS. Them kids don't want to go to ISS with her. Oh,
That's how it should be.
she makes them do exactly everything they're supposed to do. It's quiet in there. You can barely like breathe at all. Like she is top notch. You gonna be in here so you don't want to come back. I love it. I love it. She's a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And
So that's
I would even
interesting.
compare I would even compare that to back to the two parents. Like if one parent, has set an expectation or a consequence for something, and then even if they decide together, then both parents have to uphold
Yeah.
what the decision is. Like you can't go back and then somewhere in between the consequence decide that, oh, I'm just gonna let up a little bit, or I'm gonna give in a little bit because you've been doing good so far. Like no,
Be
we
a
can't do
team.
that. We got to
Everybody's
be a
got to
team. We got
come
to stay a
stay.
team.
Yes, you gotta stay a team through and
That's
through to the end. So that's a good example too, for sure.
absolutely.
What's
I
another
think that
strategy?
another side of that to look at though is, are you expecting too much? Like,
Mm,
what are your expectations of these kids? Yes, we want to be a team and come up with something together, but part of that has to be, what are the expectations? We can't expect them to behave perfectly. And especially if they're like in a situation where they're really scared or extremely stressed, if they're afraid or anxious. Like for example, when kids go get vaccinations
yep.
because they're starting school. Like they're at that age, and by this time they know when I go to this doctor's office, then people finna stick me. And for a lot of kids, that's a high anxiety situation.
Yeah.
Um, and we, as parents, as caregivers, we got to be careful that we don't expect them to just be able to take it just
Yeah.
because we can or anything like that. Like you see what I'm saying?
Definitely, yeah. So I like to say, like, if you are in a highly stressful, or if your child or student is in a highly stressful situation, they are going to need more adult support. They aren't going to need, it's not beneficial for you to give back that same energy. Now, I'm a parent, I've been in the classroom. I know that can be easier said than done, because
Mhm.
I know for myself, by the time I get to the point where I'm raising my voice, I've already tried a lot of things to avoid bringing us to that point. So when I get to that point, it's like gloves come off and let me just give it to you so that I can get your attention, because clearly the way I tried to address it before didn't really snap you back into your right mind. So let me help you in a different way. But in a highly stressful situation, they're going to need more support. And I don't want our strategies that we're sharing to come across as like soft and, this, this type of parenting approach that letting the kids run all over you and have too much autonomy, and the same thing in the
Gentle
classroom.
parenting. That's what it's gentle parenting
Digital
these days.
parenting, yeah. I like a nice mix because I didn't grow up in a house with gentle parenting. And my choices were limited to what was given to me. And even then, those weren't always the choices that I wanted. But now I think when you know better, you do better. So we realize how much, I think, as kids we would have appreciated more space to be heard on certain things, and we want to extend that to the kids and the students that we have now. So checking your expectations is making sure you're understanding that kids aren't always going to behave perfectly. Sometimes I look at my son and I'm like, who are you? Because the kid I know doesn't act like this. The kid I raised doesn't act like this. They don't talk to me like this. Who are you? And then I start to speak like affirmations. You are not a disrespectful child. You are a respectful child. You are a loving child. You are kind. And just reminding him who he is, because I know for myself in those moments, catch me when I'm hungry and need something to eat. We talked about that last week, like with the Snickers commercial, where they give the Snickers to the person, like, here, get a Snickers. And they go from this rageful individual to a more calm, back to their true selves. So, catch me when I'm hungry and I might show you a different side of me. And so in those moments, I think it would be beneficial for somebody to hand me a Snickers. In real life, that would be reaffirming who I am. Hey, are you okay? Do you need, is everything all right? Opening the door for me to express a little bit more. So just teachers, I know it can be hard in the classroom, and I know Val, you can speak to this because you've been in the classroom for a long time. When the kids' emotions are high, can it be difficult to offer that adult support in the moment?
Absolutely, is the short answer. Um, I think that the faster you master the skill of your own emotional regulation, the easier time you'll have in those situations. It's like they always talk about us teachers having a toolbox, and all these different strategies. And I do, in my experience, I've spent more time in professional development working on academic tools to put in my toolbox, and not as much time working on behavioral and emotional strategies to put in my toolbox when I'm in a situation. So a lot of what I've learned has been trial and error. I do have a knack, and I think I've said it before, but it bears saying again. In a situation with a child, especially the ones who tend to go high with their emotions,
Mhm.
I've learned to be opposite. The higher they are, the lower I get. The more angry they are, the more calm I make myself, because that energy transfers. And because you're the adult, if you've established that you are the authority, if you do that, what'll happen is it will calm them down. So that's my teacher tip for for today. But it also works the opposite. I love how you said you speak affirmation over your kid in those situations. You speak the opposite to put
Mhm.
that positive energy back in him. And I think that's so important because a lot of kids, especially in school, they don't hear the positive things about them. And we know this because they're always saying negative things about each other.
Yeah, for sure. So as a teacher, I would definitely offer that as a suggestion as well to speak to them words that affirm who they truly are. Because we all can shift in moments of stress and high emotions. So just reminding them, you know, who they are, I think is a great strategy too. I like to share taking the long view. And what I mean by this is that most kids learn to manage big feelings by the time they're in elementary school. But that doesn't mean that their emotional development is finished at that point. Remember, we talked about the executive functioning component or part of the brain isn't even fully developed until people are in their 20s. So
Mhm.
while elementary, I like since I have a background in special education, I like to use the term typically developing students. So if your child has special needs, there might be variations in what I'm about to say. But typically developing students by the time they're in elementary school can avoid and stop themselves from falling out on the floor and throwing a tantrum, from banging their head on the wall, from tossing things around. Now, if you have other factors at play, maybe it was, delayed speech that might be causing them to act out because they don't have the language to express themselves. Maybe there's a cognitive impact there that challenge their development. So there are all types of different factors that can be at play. So that's why I use that word typically developing. So you got to know your students. It's very important to know them so that you can set, like we said before, the correct expectations. Because we talked about how executive functioning involves skills like planning, organizing, problem solving, and controlling impulses. And that continues through young adulthood and even into old adulthood. We can all name some grown people right now who have difficulty controlling their emotions, who are challenged in solving problems, who cannot stay organized to save their lives, and who lack planning. We could think of one person, maybe even two, right off the top of our head, that you're like, oh, now I know why so and so is like, your executive functioning skills are not fully developed. Thank you so much. Now I know why you are the way that you are.
And now
So
I know how to proceed from here.
exactly. Exactly. So when you feel frustrated by your kids' behavior, you just have to remember that emotional regulation takes time. And I know I'm on the end where kids are really young, like daycare age, preschool age. And I know you've seen the other end of the spectrum, middle and high school. Would you say that that's true as well?
Absolutely. I think I talked about a current student who would just kind of say things randomly, just outburst out loud. And the great thing is because I was patient, because I understood a lot of this stuff, because I knew I had to be consistent in letting him
Mhm.
know what the expectation is, and then also guiding him on how to meet that expectation. I I don't at this point in the year, I don't have really any more issues with him doing that.
Mhm.
So but it takes time. Like I said, that was from the beginning of the year and it's almost the end of the year. But if we don't take that time when we have them and we keep putting it off as somebody else's responsibility, the kid never gets the support or the opportunity that they need to develop typically like we
Yeah.
would want them to. And so that also causes compound delay in that devidemental prefrontal cortex.
Okay, Val with
Okay,
the
all right.
prefrontal
Yes.
cortex. Hit him with that academic language, girl.
I like words.
And I know a few episodes back we had Danita Bird on, and she's a mental health therapist, and she talked about the mental health component as well. And so I know some schools have executive functioning coaches that come into the school, and that's their job, is to help kids develop and think about the development of these skills. Because remember, executive functioning goes back to being able to think about, how you're acting, what your actions are, and being able to, juggle multiple tasks, being able to think about how you're acting, control your impulses, all of those things. And so the executive functioning coaches come into the classroom and or come into the school, I should say, and work with select group of kids. It's not something that can just be widespread across all students. I mean, some of these schools have 700 plus kids in the
Mhm.
building. So you're going to need more than just one executive functioning coach, but, working with a select group of children to help them develop these skills, because it does really trickle down. If you haven't established a good emotional regulation, it trickles down into your social life, academic life, personal, all of that for the kids in schools too.
And I would say one suggestion for schools, if maybe getting a person who does specifically that is not possible or not feasible for the school or the system, some schools have a position called a behavior specialist or a behavior interventionist. And so I think it'd be really great if that person could go through professional development
Mhm.
on how is executive functioning affecting kids, like just get more knowledge and information about that just to help them in that position if we can't get an expert.
Yeah, definitely. So I know sometimes teachers, the way that public education is laid out is like get to the end of the year testing. Like we're getting students prepared for these end of the year assessments. And things like emotional regulation might seem like something that you don't want to spend much time even going into, because you're like, listen, I'm trying to follow this pacing guide. I'm trying to deal with leadership in the building. Maybe my grade level teammates are not on board with the way things need to be. And taking time out to address emotional regulation might seem like something that doesn't need the time and attention that it deserves. But if you can carve out that top of the morning 5 minutes to talk about, a component that we've shared today and in last week's episode, I find that a lot of kids connect with what I share with them when I share a personal experience. When I open up and I share how I made a poor choice. I made a horrible decision. I reacted in a way that I wish I hadn't, and
Mhm.
talked through how I navigated those circumstances and situations. I feel like they listen a bit more. What do you think?
I think it's human nature because if as adults, I know if you're telling me something that you're trying to say I need to do or suggesting for me, I want to know, have you experienced it before?
Hmm.
Like, if you hadn't been through what I've been through, it's gonna be really hard for me to listen and take in what you're trying to say. Kids are just younger humans, so they do the same thing. The times when I've had kids complete undivided attention in the classroom is when I'm telling a story, when I'm telling about a personal experience. Um, I take time to talk about emotional regulation. I don't call it that, but the
Yeah.
biggest thing is how do I get kids to calm down who experience test anxiety? And you can't always tell because kids respond differently. So, one of the major things I do is teach them how to breathe. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had students right before the test, we went back over and I've had students come to me and say, I had to breathe during the test. And I'm like, yes, they
Yes.
listened and they trust me enough because we built relationships
Yep.
again that they tried it to see if it works. And I'm talking about all kids from the high level kids to a kid that I have on the spectrum when I had a conversation with her. So
Yeah.
it just
I
takes
love that.
time.
It does. It does. And you can't teach what you don't know. So you have to educate yourself first as a parent, as a teacher, before you can start, imparting knowledge on your child or your student as well.
Absolutely.
Well, I know we have some super great news because this is episode 20, in case you didn't know. And we are now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Hey.
Hey. So I know sometimes it can be hard to catch the live on YouTube and Facebook. And sometimes we don't always get on social media during the day to catch the replay. But now we can join you on your ride to work, your ride home from work, your ride to run an errand. So use the search Tuesday Talks on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you'll be able to find us that way. And we also have a freebie newsletter that I'm going to pop a link in the chat. If you are listening to us on podcast, then you will be able to come to our Facebook page to find the link to the freebie as well. And what we did was really laid out all of the strategies that we've been talking about over the past 2 episodes. So fill out the freebie, click on the link, and it'll take you to a Google form that you'll fill out, and you will be able to just enter your information really quick. We'll email it to you, and that way you can find it quickly and be able to share this with friends and with family.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm so excited. 20 episodes,
I know.
and officially on platforms for podcasts.
Yes,
Excited.
I love it. I love it. Big things are in store. So continue to join us each week. We are talking about, again, all things education. If you are a teacher, you are a parent, we are talking about things that matter to you and that can really enhance your teaching experience and your parenting experience as well, and help you just kind of see things from a different viewpoint. So definitely check out last week's episode and the previous week's episode for content that led up to tonight. And we will see you all next week.
Good night, everybody.
Night.